Cop threatens to arrest black woman over fake passport. What she does next shocks entire airline. Picture this. A bustling airport terminal filled with anxious travelers, all eyes darting between the overhead screens and their phones. A tall police officer, brimmed hat casting a shadow over his narrowed eyes, strides forward with an air of authority. In front of him stands a poised black woman, a passport clutched tightly in her hand. Her expression is a mixture of defiance and trepidation, as he accuses her of carrying a fake passport, threatening to haul her off in handcuffs. Passengers pause in disbelief, jaws dropping at the bold confrontation. What happens next will flip the entire airline, and everyone watching upside down. On a particularly sweltering Monday morning at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, throngs of travelers jockeyed for position in check-in lines that wound around pillars and stretched halfway down the concourse. Luggage wheels clacked against tiled floors. Children whined for snacks or bathroom breaks, and overhead announcements reminded everyone of mask guidelines and last-minute gate changes. The chatter was a vibrant tapestry of languages, English, Spanish, French, and a dozen others, harmonizing in the echoing halls. Among the crowd was Imani Campbell, a tall, elegant black woman in her early 30s, wearing a crisp white blouse, pressed navy slacks, and sensible black flats. She stood with her carry-on by her side, reviewing a handful of documents while balancing her phone between her ear and shoulder. Her voice, cool and controlled, cut through the chaos around her. "Yes, Bernard. I'm at gate A17. No, I'm not boarding yet. Calm down," she said into her phone. "And yes, I have all the paperwork for the meeting in London." Her tone exuded confidence, underscored by the subtle authority of someone used to leading. Yet to anyone watching, Imani appeared to be just another passenger preparing for an international flight. A soft ping signaled an incoming text. She glanced at her phone screen. "We'll be waiting for you at Heathrow. Safe flight." The message was from her personal assistant in the UK. Imani slid her phone into her purse and refocused on the line ahead. The digital sign above the check-in counters flashed. Trident Airways Flight 514, Atlanta, ATL, to London Heathrow, LHR. Trident Airways was a relatively new carrier expanding rapidly into international routes. They were known for their sleek new planes, upgraded business-class cabins, and top-rated in-flight service. Travelers who had tried them raved about the comfort and the staff's courtesy. Imani took a moment to scan the area. Though she was used to traveling incognito, she couldn't help a small inward grin. This was her airline, technically at least. As the majority shareholder and the driving force behind many of Trident's new initiatives, Imani preferred to keep a low public profile. She traveled under her own name, but very few outside the highest executive circles of the company were aware of her position and influence. She believed in observing real passenger experiences, unnoticed, to gather genuine insights. And if everything went according to plan, after her trip to London, the next big announcement about Trident's expansion would hit the headlines. It began so innocently. An announcement over the airport intercom requested travelers on Trident Flight 514 to line up for boarding. Imani joined the queue, passport and boarding pass in hand. Security staff glanced at her ID and cleared her. Soon she was at the boarding gate's final checkpoint, where a uniformed airline representative performed the routine pass scan. Then something snagged. A beep from the scanning machine. A beep not of the usual acceptance, but a deeper, more ominous tone. The gate agent frowned at the small screen and tried to scan again. Same result. "Let me check manually," said the agent, tapping the screen. Miss Campbell, correct?" "Yes," replied Imani. "Passport number, boarding pass. Everything seems in order. Could just be a minor glitch." The agent forced a polite smile, trying to reassure her. "One moment, please." The agent stepped aside and made a brief phone call. Imani waited, tapping her foot lightly. She was used to the occasional glitch or random security check. Even if it was a small inconvenience, she took it in stride. Moments later, a second official appeared, a TSA officer. He looked at her documents, then at Imani. A subtle tension passed through the air. He rifled through the passport pages, scanning them with practiced eyes. "Ma'am, "Would you mind stepping aside for a moment?" the officer asked, his voice low, attempting neutrality. Imani's heart rate rose a fraction, just enough for her to notice. "Certainly," she said, projecting calm. She followed him to a small, roped-off area. The hustle of the airport continued on behind them. Nearby travelers shot fleeting glances, more curious than concerned. It wasn't uncommon to see travelers pulled aside for additional checks. Imani carefully controlled her breathing. She had traveled internationally dozens of times. She had the correct visas, a valid passport, and all necessary documentation. There should be no real issue, just an inconvenience at worst. She told herself it would be resolved shortly. Little did she know, this was only the beginning. After a brief exchange with the TSA officer, a uniformed airport police officer arrived. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and wore a confident smirk that made Imani's stomach tighten in an unpleasant way. His name tag read, Officer Bradley Thompson. He fiddled with his belt where a pair of handcuffs and a holstered firearm gleamed under the fluorescent lights. "Miss Campbell, is it?" Thompson asked, picking up her passport from the TSA counter. He flipped through it with a cursory glance, then looked at her with sharp, assessing eyes. "We have reason to believe this document might not be authentic." Imani's eyes widened. "Excuse me?" The officer gave a quick shrug. "We've had alerts about certain forged passports. Your passport has some anomalies with the digital scan. It's policy to verify thoroughly." Her heartbeat quickened. "That's strange. It's a valid U.S. passport. I've traveled with it many times without any issues." He didn't look convinced. "We take these matters very seriously." Some onlookers in the area started to slow down, overhearing the exchange. Imani felt their eyes on her. She reined in a surge of irritation. She prided herself on composure, but could already feel that familiar burn behind her eyes. The feeling of being cornered, singled out. In a calm but firm voice, she said, "I understand security is important, but I can assure you I'm a U.S. citizen, and that passport is legitimate. Is there a way to confirm that quickly?" "Ma'am, I suggest you let us do our job," Officer Thompson said, his tone bordering on condescension. "We'll run a deeper check. If something is off, we'll have to detain you. That's standard procedure." Imani swallowed back her frustration. She had no illusions about how these situations sometimes played out. The undercurrent in the officer's voice made her uneasy. She tried to keep her focus on resolution. "Please, go ahead." It didn't take long for a small audience to gather. Other passengers from Flight 514 watched curiously. Some bored, some concerned, some perhaps smelling drama. A few held up their phones, filming on the sly. In the era of social media, any tension between a police officer and a passenger, especially a passenger of color, tended to catch quick attention. Officer Thompson summoned a second policeman, who marched up with an airport official in tow. Imani found herself standing near a line of uniformed personnel, feeling more conspicuous with each passing second. "All right," Thompson began. "We ran the initial verification. Your passport's digital chip is giving contradictory data. Could be a glitch, but we've also seen sophisticated fakes that do exactly that." Imani forced a level tone. "I'm telling you it's not fake." Thompson lifted his hand, cutting her off. "Step over here. We'll sort this out in private." He motioned to a side area cordoned off by thick curtains, the secondary inspection room. In her mind, Imani weighed her options. She could comply or ask to speak to a supervisor. The last thing she wanted was a spectacle that ended with her in handcuffs. The logical step was to let them run their checks in a side room. She nodded, moving as directed. Before she disappeared behind the curtain, she couldn't help noticing the stares. A swirl of emotions, embarrassment, anger, disbelief, mingled in her chest. She took a deep breath, longing for it to be a small glitch that would soon blow over. But the dark cloud of suspicion lingered, and she sensed this wasn't going to be resolved easily. The private inspection room was cramped, containing a metal table, a few plastic chairs, and glaring overhead lights that made everything feel harsh. Imani handed over her passport again. The second police officer, Officer Jimenez, stood near the door, arms folded, posture rigid. Thompson pointed to a seat, and Imani lowered herself into the chair, posture straight, eyes forward. "What's your name, address, date of birth?" Thompson asked, pen poised over a form. Imani provided the information calmly, repeating her full legal name. Imani Aurora Campbell. She even added, "I was born in Chicago at Northwestern Memorial Hospital." "Reason for travel?" he continued. "Business," Imani replied. "Where?" "London." Thompson tapped his pen. "You traveling alone?" "Yes." He flipped through her passport again, holding it up to the light. "There's something about the laminate. Maybe it's just me, but it looks tampered with. Our system also flagged the passport number as suspicious. You sure you haven't lost or damaged it in the past?" Imani exhaled slowly. "I've never lost it or reported it stolen. Look, officer, if there's an error with the system, let's clear it up. You can contact the State Department. My full name is—" He cut her off with a raised hand. "Ma'am, I'll decide how we proceed. Let's do this properly." She bit back a retort, trying not to let anger flare. It often didn't help to argue with authorities who wielded the power, but the simmering sense of injustice gnawed at her. She'd been singled out for something that made no sense, and she could sense that Thompson's posture, his tone, everything about him spelled a preconceived notion. That she, a black woman in business attire, might be some sort of criminal or fraud. Officer Jimenez typed on a small laptop in the corner, presumably running checks with the State Department database. Minutes ticked by. Imani's phone buzzed in her purse, but Thompson eyed her, clearly not wanting her to pull it out. Eventually, Jimenez looked up. "I'm not seeing anything conclusive yet. The system is slow right now. Might be a glitch." Thompson let out a low grunt. He turned back to Imani. "Let's assume for a moment that this is a glitch, that your passport is real. Are you traveling on any other passport or with any other documents? Dual citizenship? Fake ID? We've seen it before." A spark of indignation surged in Imani's chest. "Is that a serious question?" He narrowed his eyes. "I'm asking because I want the truth." Her voice tightened. "I have one citizenship, American. One passport, this one. If you look inside, you'll see valid stamps from my previous travels, including just last month." He looked at the stamps. "We see plenty of clever fakes." She had to clamp down on her temper. "I assure you, I'm not carrying anything fake." "Then you won't mind if we do a thorough check of your carry-on?" he asked, more a command than a question. Without a word, Imani nodded. Thompson proceeded to empty her bag onto the table. Laptop, phone, charger, a binder with notes, a few business cards, a small wallet, some toiletries. He scanned the business cards. One read, "Imani Campbell, Executive Director, Apex Consultants." Her consulting firm was a small entity she used primarily to manage personal investments and philanthropic endeavors. It didn't reveal her deeper involvement with Trident Airways. She also had separate business cards for her top-level position at Trident, but she rarely carried those when she traveled undercover. "You a business consultant?" Thompson inquired, eyeing the card suspiciously. "Yes," she replied. He opened the binder where half a dozen contract documents were neatly laid out. Confidential stamps appeared on several pages, referencing an upcoming Project X tied to a certain airline. He scanned a few lines but didn't seem to fully grasp their meaning. "This some corporate stuff?" "That's private company information," Imani said quietly, though part of her dreaded him reading too far and discovering her major role in Trident. She wasn't yet ready to reveal she was the airline's primary owner. She wanted to see how they'd handle it, how they'd treat a regular passenger with a suspicious passport. He gave her a sideways glance but seemed more interested in the notion of a possible forgery than the binder's contents. "We'll copy these for further review if needed." She stiffened. "I'd prefer you not handle my sensitive business documents unless absolutely necessary." He shot her a glare. "Are you trying to hide something?" Imani closed her eyes for a brief moment. This interrogation was spiraling, I'm not hiding anything. Those documents just contain proprietary business details. Officer Jimenez stepped forward, noticing the tension. Look, let me check one more database. Maybe there's a conflict with the booking name or a simple data mismatch. It's been known to happen. But Thompson folded his arms. We'll see if you're telling the truth. If I find out you're traveling under false pretenses, forging documents, or anything else, you will be under arrest. Out in the terminal, the boarding for Flight 514 continued, though slower than usual. The gate agent announced a slight delay. Word circulated among the waiting passengers that someone had been taken aside by security. People murmured that the passenger in question was a well-dressed black woman. Some who had glimpsed the confrontation at the rope barrier started sharing phone videos or gossip with others. Carlos Mendoza, a frequent flyer with Trident, recognized Imani from a previous flight. He'd seen her in the lounge reading what looked like strategic business documents for an airline. He didn't know her personally, but he suspected she might be someone important. He noticed the tension in the air, the wary looks on people's faces. Something was off about the situation. Meanwhile, an older woman named Deborah Hastings, who had been seated near Imani at the gate, told her husband she had overheard the officer accusing Imani of having a fake passport. "I saw her documents. She looked legitimate to me," Deborah whispered, but that officer was talking to her like she was a criminal. Within minutes, a microcosm of the traveling public was abuzz with speculation. A few travelers shrugged and went back to their phone games, but others sensed a wrong unfolding. One young man started streaming live on a social media platform, urging people to watch as a potential instance of profiling played out at the airport. Unbeknownst to them, tension was mounting behind the closed door of the inspection room, where Imani's fate hung in the balance. Officer Jimenez gave a subtle nod to Thompson, indicating that more thorough checks were in progress, but the system was slow. Thompson paced the small room as if eager to find a conclusive reason to slap on the cuffs. "Miss Campbell," he said in a voice that carried the authority of a judge pronouncing sentence, "we have to make sure you're not trying to slip through with forged credentials. People do it all the time. Human trafficking, international smuggling, you name it." Imani bristled. "I have no connection to any such activities. Is it that hard to verify my passport with the appropriate offices?" He scowled, but she pressed on, her patience wearing thin. "I've cooperated fully, given you everything you asked for. There must be a supervisor or a higher-level official who can step in to confirm my identity without this humiliating interrogation." At that moment, Officer Jimenez received a call on his cell. He stepped out, leaving Thompson alone with Imani. She took the opportunity to address Thompson directly. "I understand you have a job to do, but you're borderline harassing me over a system glitch. I'm not a criminal. You're making assumptions that could cost me an important flight." Thompson's expression hardened. He leaned in, voice dropping low. "Listen here, Miss Consultant. I've seen all kinds of people waltz in thinking they can fool us. You might have money, fancy clothes, or think you're above the law. But you show any signs of a fake passport and I'll lock you up. Got it?" A flare of anger shot through Imani. She realized this wasn't about protocol anymore. It was personal. She recognized the undertone she'd encountered countless times, a mixture of prejudice, power-tripping, and condescension. Still, she forced herself to remain calm, though her knuckles whitened around the edge of the table. "I have absolutely nothing to hide." He didn't respond, just gave a withering look. She could almost hear his thoughts. "Sure you don't." When Jimenez re-entered, Thompson asked, "Any updates?" Jimenez shrugged, frustration in his tone. "The system's jammed with other requests. The advanced check might take half an hour, maybe more. Then we might miss the flight," Imani said, exasperated. "Officer, if you don't get verification in time, what happens? Do you just detain me here overnight?" Thompson fixed her with a stony glare. "If it's not resolved, or if something suspicious crops up, we'll arrest you on the spot. You'll be placed in holding, that's how it works." The threat hung in the air. Imani wrestled with the urge to finally reveal her true identity, to call top-level airport executives or a senator she knew, or even her personal contact at the Department of Homeland Security, who oversaw corporate travel compliance. She had the power to end this fiasco with a few well-placed calls, but part of her wanted to see if the system would do the right thing on its own, if these officers would realize their mistake and apologize. She was tired of the assumption that a black traveler with enough confidence and well-dressed stature must be suspicious. Meanwhile, outside the inspection room, Flight 514's pilot, Captain Andrea Reynolds, received word from the gate agent that the plane's departure was delayed due to a security matter. She frowned. Trident prided itself on punctuality, and any delay was a black mark on the airline's record. Captain Reynolds asked who the passenger was, but the gate agent didn't have many details. Passengers grew restless at Gate A-17. Muted arguments over missed connections rippled through the crowd. Some business travelers on tight schedules scowled at their phones, emailing colleagues to warn of potential delays. A mother tried to calm her two kids, who complained about how long they had to wait. The tension ratcheted up when an airline supervisor arrived at the gate, conferring with the staff. Finally, he approached the curtained inspection area, stepping inside to see what the holdup was. Donald Gray, a middle-aged man in a dark suit with the Trident Airways badge pinned to his lapel, paused upon seeing Imani at the table. He recognized her immediately. All color drained from his face. Imani and Donald locked eyes, and there was a flicker of mutual understanding. But her expression warned him not to blow her cover just yet. Donald took a slow breath, then cleared his throat. "Officers, I'm Donald Gray, a supervisor with Trident Airways. I was told there's a potential passport issue with Miss Campbell, a passenger on our Flight 514. Is there any update?" Officer Thompson eyed Donald suspiciously. "Who are you in relation to the passenger?" He repeated, "Supervisor with the airline. Our flight's delayed because she hasn't boarded." Thompson measured the man's posture. "Right. She's under suspicion for carrying a potentially fake passport. That's all you need to know right now." Donald's eyes flicked to Imani again. He swallowed, noticing the tension in her jaw. She was giving him a subtle shake of her head, as if to say, "Don't intervene in a way that reveals me." "Officers, this woman is a valued passenger," Donald said carefully. "I can vouch that she's traveled with us in the past without incident. Perhaps you could expedite the process or check with the airline's own records. We maintain passenger data which might corroborate her identity." Thompson stared at him. "We don't need your help. This is a police matter. When we're done, you'll get your passenger, if she's even allowed to fly." Imani folded her arms, nodding subtly at Donald, indicating she would handle it for now. He hesitated. He knew exactly who she was, the biggest investor in Trident, but he also sensed she had a reason for remaining low-key. "All right," he said slowly. "I'll let the gate staff know we're still waiting on you." As he left, Donald shot her a look of sympathy, which Thompson did not fail to notice. The officer's suspicion seemed to heighten. Once Donald was gone, Thompson turned to Jimenez. "See if airline records can confirm her ID." Imani perked up. "Yes, do that." But Thompson's phone buzzed. He took a call that made his brow furrow. "Yes, sir. Understood. We'll handle it." He ended the call and gave Imani a thin smile. "We've just been told to expedite this. Consider that your good luck. Or maybe not, we'll see." She couldn't read him. Was he angry that someone higher up had told him to hurry? Probably. She wouldn't be surprised if the airline or even airport administration had started asking questions about the delay. Finally, after another 10 minutes, Jimenez's computer beeped. He exhaled in relief. "The system's back. Running the check now." Everyone in the room held their breath. The tension was thick as the minutes dragged. Imani could feel her pulse pounding in her ears. She hoped the verification would come through quickly and absolutely confirm her identity. No more questions asked. She also knew if for some bizarre reason the system glitch persisted, she might be in this airport jail for hours or worse. Suddenly a beep signaled the completion of the search. Jimenez leaned in, reading, his brow knitted. "Huh, that's strange." Thompson stepped closer. "What is it?" It's confirming her name, birth date, address. It shows a valid U.S. passport in that name. No record of any theft or forgery. The passport is legit. But there's a note here about high-level security clearance references. Something's flagged. Thompson's eyebrows shot up. Flagged how? For watch list or something? Jimenez read more carefully. No, not for a watch list. More like she's connected to an elevated traveler program. Possibly some VIP clearance. It's encrypted. I can't access the details. Imani let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The data was referencing her role as a top executive with Trident, who occasionally traveled under special clearance for business deals with major government airports. Jimenez blinked, uncomprehending. It's not a negative flag, but it means she's someone important, I guess. Thompson was silent for a beat. He turned and looked at Imani. For the first time since their encounter, doubt and confusion flickered across his face. So it's not fake? He asked, sounding almost disappointed. Imani snorted softly. No, officer, it's not. I've been trying to tell you that. He scowled. All right, so you check out. Doesn't mean I can't place you under arrest for refusing to comply or lying. Imani stood up. I never lied, nor refused to comply. I complied with everything you asked. If you're done with your investigation, I'd like to catch my flight. Officer Jimenez coughed lightly. Officer Thompson, the system confirms her identity. We have no probable cause to detain her further. Thompson looked like he'd swallowed something sour. He stared at Imani, perhaps searching for any last shred of reason to keep her. Finally, he tossed her passport onto the table, the pages flapping open. You're free to go, he said, his voice tight. For now. Imani scooped up her passport, placed it in her purse, and began repacking her carry-on. She could feel the adrenaline racing through her veins. She was relieved, but also furious. He had threatened to arrest her repeatedly, all because of a glitch that triggered his prejudice. As she repacked her binder, something inside her snapped. The memory of the humiliations she had endured, the suspicious stares, the condescending accusations, rose like a tidal wave. This wasn't just a random glitch. It was indicative of a larger problem, the bias that singled out travelers of color. She met Thompson's gaze squarely. I hope you'll remember to treat the next person you suspect with more professionalism. You were out of line. Thompson bristled. Watch your tone, ma'am. Imani gave him a measured look. Or what? You'll arrest me for speaking the truth? A moment of tense silence passed. Jimenez looked down, clearly uncomfortable. Thompson's mouth opened, but before he could retort, Imani turned and walked out. Stepping into the terminal, Imani was greeted by a wave of curious eyes. She spotted a few people with cameras or phones pointed in her direction. Some passengers clapped softly, relieved or supportive. Others gawked like they'd just witnessed a reality show drama. Donald Gray was waiting. The moment he saw her, he exhaled in relief. Miss Camp. She held up a hand. Donald, can you gather the gate staff for a moment? He nodded, leading her to the gate. The corridor parted as people instinctively moved aside. At gate A17, the agent recognized Imani from earlier. You made it. We weren't sure. Imani took a moment to straighten her blouse and stand tall. Her mind whirled with the decision she was about to make. She could quietly board her plane, or she could show these officers and the entire staff exactly who they'd been messing with. At that moment, Thompson and Jimenez emerged behind her. Thompson was scowling, no doubt planning to linger to ensure she boarded and left, or maybe to keep an eye on her. The tension was palpable. Imani turned around slowly, scanning the faces of the gate agents, the passengers, and then fixing her gaze on Thompson. She took a step forward, raising her voice enough for those nearby to hear. For those who don't know me, my name is Imani Aurora Campbell. She paused, letting the words land. Donald Gray stood slightly behind her, not sure what she'd reveal next. I am a senior executive, in fact the majority owner of Trident Airways. A gasp rippled through the crowd. The gate agent's eyes went wide. Donald looked down, bracing for the bombshell. The expressions of the passengers shifted from curiosity to outright shock. Thompson's jaw went slack. Imani continued, "I came here today to fly to London on my own airline as a regular passenger, to observe our service, gather experiences, and proceed with important business negotiations. Instead, I was nearly detained by Officer Thompson, who repeatedly threatened me with arrest over a so-called fake passport. A glitch in the system flagged my documents, but rather than handle it with professionalism, I was treated like a criminal." A hush fell over the surrounding area, punctuated only by a few phones buzzing with notifications. Some travelers pressed closer to record her every word. Imani squared her shoulders, looking directly at Thompson. "Officer Thompson, you accused me of forging a passport, threatened me with jail, and treated me with disrespect. Even when your partner's checks showed my identity was legitimate, you still spoke to me as though I were guilty. That is unacceptable." Thompson's face reddened. He opened his mouth to defend himself, but the weight of the crowd's attention pinned him in place. "This is not just about me," Imani continued. "It's about every traveler who has been singled out unfairly. I have the resources and the authority to hold people accountable. Others might not have that same advantage. You took a glitch and turned it into a humiliating ordeal because of your bias. As the owner of Trident Airways, I refuse to let this matter go. I will be filing a formal complaint with airport administration and local authorities regarding your conduct." Whispers and gasps spread through the crowd. Some passengers nodded vigorously, and a few applauded softly. The tension soared to new heights. Thompson tried to regain composure. "Now hold on, Miss Campbell, the system flagged." She cut him off. "The system flagged a discrepancy. It didn't direct you to threaten or belittle me. That was your choice." He fell silent, a flicker of shame crossing his features. Jimenez stepped back, not wanting to be associated with Thompson's approach. Imani turned to Donald. "Donald, ensure the flight crew and the gate staff know the flight can proceed. I'll board when I'm ready." Donald nodded, quickly moving to handle the logistics. The passengers parted ways, some giving Imani respectful nods, others murmuring in awe. The scene was electric. Phones were capturing every moment. This was not a typical day at Hartsfield-Jackson. As the final boarding call was announced for Flight 514, Imani stood at the threshold. She took one last look at Officer Thompson, who hovered near the gate in a daze. The confrontation had left him reeling. She almost felt a twinge of pity. This moment would likely haunt his career. But mostly she felt relief that the truth had come to light. She gave her boarding pass to the agent, who scanned it with shaky hands. The beep was a crisp affirmative tone. No glitch this time. Then she walked down the jet bridge, shoulders set, head high. On board, Captain Andrea Reynolds stood outside the cockpit, having heard bits of the commotion. She greeted Imani with professional courtesy, eyes wide. "Miss Campbell, we're honored to have you on board," Imani replied with a small smile. "Thank you, Captain. I'm sorry for the delay." "Not your fault," the captain said quickly. "We'll make up some time in the air." Imani found her seat in the front cabin. As she stowed her carry-on, she noticed the discreet looks from the flight attendants. Word traveled fast that their boss, the boss, was on board. Some faces showed admiration, others curiosity, perhaps intimidation. Imani simply nodded politely, buckled in, and tried to compose herself for the long flight ahead. Shortly after takeoff, the seatbelt sign switched off, and the cabin settled into the gentle hum of a long-haul flight. Imani stared out the window at the vast expanse of clouds. Her mind buzzed with the morning's events. She recounted the fear, the anger, and finally the satisfaction of revealing her identity. But she also felt a swell of sadness. How many times had others been subjected to similar treatment without the power to fight back? Her ordeal ended with an epic reveal that she was the airline owner, but for countless others such humiliations could lead to missed flights, wrongful detainment, or worse. Imani sipped a glass of water, letting the cool liquid steady her nerves. She opened her laptop, typed some notes about improvements to the airline's passenger experience. She noted the gate glitch, the system error, and thought about policies to better handle false positive security flags. However, the real problem wasn't just technology, it was prejudice. She recognized that all the advanced systems in the world wouldn't matter if the human element was flawed. She vowed to push for training programs, not only for Trident staff but also for airport security. Programs that addressed implicit bias head-on. She resolved to use her influence to push for changes at every level, from the moment a passenger sets foot in the airport to the second they take their seat. Business class was comfortable, with plush seats and on-demand entertainment. But Imani couldn't fully relax. Her mind kept drifting back to Officer Thompson's threatening stance, his dismissive tone. She wondered if he truly felt remorse or if he would simply see himself as the victim of a powerful woman. Either way, she intended to file the complaint she promised. She would use her resources to ensure real accountability. Karma had already started to catch up with Thompson in that humiliating moment when the entire gate discovered he'd been harassing the owner of the airline. But that was only the beginning. At Hartsfield-Jackson, the echoes of the incident reverberated throughout the day. Several passengers who witnessed or recorded the showdown posted videos on social media. The video showed Imani confronting Thompson, revealing her identity, and calling him out for his conduct. Hashtags began trending locally. #airline owner confrontation, #Trident Airways boss #flying, while black view counts skyrocketed. The story quickly made its way onto local news sites, which had always been hungry for stories about potential racial profiling and viral airport confrontations. By midday, the snippet of Imani saying, "I am the majority owner of Trident Airways," had gone viral on Twitter. Comments poured in, many praising her bravery, others criticizing the officer's behavior. A few trolls tried to spin it in negative ways, but the overarching sentiment was supportive of Imani. Within hours, the Atlanta Police Department began a preliminary internal review of Officer Thompson's actions. The airport authority also demanded a meeting to discuss the fiasco and mitigate the negative press. Thompson found himself under scrutiny. The original glitch in the system was confirmed, but that didn't excuse how he handled the situation. Karma was indeed looming large over Officer Bradley Thompson. A department spokesperson gave a tight-lipped statement to the press. "We are aware of the incident involving Officer Thompson and Miss Campbell. We take all reports of misconduct seriously and are conducting a thorough investigation." Late that same afternoon, the local news anchor reported, "Sources tell us that Officer Thompson has been placed on administrative leave pending further review. He had to face the consequences of his bias and mishandling of authority." Upon landing at Heathrow, Imani turned on her phone to a flurry of notifications. Her assistant Bernard greeted her at the arrivals hall, looking both anxious and excited. "Oh my God, Imani, have you seen the internet?" he gasped. "You're all over social media, and the phone's been ringing off the hook at the corporate office. News outlets want statements. The board's already preparing an official press release." She gave him a weary smile. "I suspected it might blow up. Let's get to the hotel. I need a shower, a strong cup of coffee, and then we'll figure out the next steps." That afternoon, she sat in a quiet hotel suite overlooking London's skyline. She toggled between calls with Trident's PR team, her legal counsel, and airport authorities in Atlanta. Everyone wanted her side of the story in detail. She wanted to make sure the official statement addressed the broader issue. This wasn't just about her passport or her personal inconvenience, but about ensuring fair treatment for all passengers. As the day wore on, she received a call from the airport commissioner in Atlanta, who apologized profusely for the fiasco. They assured her they would cooperate fully in any complaint filing, and that the officer's behavior did not represent the values of the airport or the city. Imani accepted the apology graciously, but remained firm. "I want real action, Commissioner. Stricter guidelines and accountability, not just words and press conferences." When the commissioner assured her that they were initiating an internal review and discussing new training protocols, she was somewhat mollified. But she knew words often got lost in bureaucracy. She planned to stay vigilant, to follow up and ensure the commitments were fulfilled. Imani's meeting in London had run longer than expected. She was in a sleek conference room on the upper floor of a high-rise that overlooked the River Thames. The final handshake concluded her negotiations with a consortium of European investors. As she stepped out into the corridor, her phone buzzed persistently, a string of notifications she'd silenced during the meeting. She glanced at the screen, a slew of missed calls from her legal counsel in Atlanta, plus half a dozen urgent texts. Her heart gave a small jolt. In the hectic days since her public showdown at Hartsfield-Jackson, she'd anticipated a storm of reactions, but nothing as explosive as what the phone's icons suggested. She found a quiet corner lounge area near the elevator, sank into a plush armchair, and called her lawyer back. On the other end, her attorney, Joanna Markham, sounded breathless yet triumphant. "Imani, are you somewhere you can talk?" "I'm at the client's office, but it's secure," Imani replied, adjusting the phone to her ear. "What's going on?" Joanna let out a long exhale as if she'd been waiting all day to relay the news. "We're seeing a big shift back here. Your complaint made waves, obviously, but it's not just your voice anymore. Multiple new complaints are pouring in about Officer Thompson. Old cases are being revived, and there are at least 3 other formal statements from airline employees and passengers claiming he harassed them in similar ways." A tingle of shock and relief swept through Imani. "So he has a history." "Apparently so," Joanna continued. One flight attendant stated that he insulted her accent and threatened to call immigration on her, even though she's a U.S. citizen. Another ground staff employee submitted a written statement describing his frequent verbal jabs toward minority passengers. And just this morning, a passenger came forward saying Thompson once confiscated her medication under the pretense of a drug check. She spent half a day in custody until the substance tested negative for controlled substances. The realization that Thompson's behavior was part of a long, ugly pattern made Imani grip the phone tighter. This wasn't just about her own ordeal. It was a microcosm of something far more systemic and sinister. "So these new allegations, they're all piling up at once?" Imani asked. "Yes, and the police department is scrambling to respond," Joanna answered, tapping some papers. Imani could practically hear her flipping through legal documents. Internal Affairs has started a comprehensive review. Reporters are hounding them for statements. Social media is going wild. Some folks are even sharing old phone footage from months ago where Thompson's seen yelling at a group of teenagers in the arrivals hall. Imani's mind flicked back to the moment in the interrogation room, the cold glare in Thompson's eyes as he threatened her with arrest over something she knew was a harmless system glitch. A wave of anger and sadness coursed through her. If not for her status in the viral video, how many more times would he have gotten away with that kind of intimidation? "What about the department's official response?" she asked. "They've put him on administrative leave," Joanna explained. "They say it's standard procedure during an investigation, but the word around the courthouse is that they might be preparing to terminate him if these allegations hold up. From what I hear, the evidence is stacking high." For a brief second, Imani felt an odd pang of pity for Thompson. She wasn't one to relish another person's downfall, even if that person had disrespected and threatened her. But she remembered the officer's sneer, how he had singled her out and dismissed her every protest. The way he twisted his power to suit his prejudice was unconscionable. Still, a bigger truth weighed heavily on her. It shouldn't take the backing of a major airline owner for a corrupt officer to be exposed. There were countless people out there, people with fewer resources, who might have suffered the same treatment or worse without the ability to fight back in such a public manner. She let out a measured breath. "He's reaping what he sowed," she said, voice subdued. "But I don't just want him fired. I want the airport and the police department to truly overhaul their policies. This can't be a superficial gesture to placate the press." Joanna's tone was reassuring. "I understand. The next step is ensuring this leads to real reforms. We've already drafted letters calling for an official review of TSA collaboration with local law enforcement, more accountability for airport police officers, and mandatory diversity training. We'll leverage your position and the public eye to push these reforms forward. Glancing around at the polished marble floors and the glass walls framing London's skyline, Imani felt a swell of resolve. She wasn't alone in this fight. The corporate team at Trident Airways stood behind her, and now a wave of public support was rising, spurred by the recognition that her ordeal symbolized a deeper problem. "That's good," she said. "I'll follow up with the board and see how we can coordinate efforts. I don't want to appear as though I'm exploiting the incident for publicity, but if we can use the attention to catalyze real change, so be it." Joanna agreed wholeheartedly. They exchanged a few more details about the ongoing investigation, then Imani ended the call. Setting the phone in her lap, she gazed at the bustling cityscape. She pictured the Atlanta airport staff, security officers, gate agents, passengers, everyone going about their day, maybe reading the news on their phones, sharing the latest updates on Thompson's downfall. Karma was indeed hitting back, but for Imani, the feeling wasn't simply vengeance or triumph, it was a clarion call, one that urged her to keep pushing until the entire system was safer and fairer for travelers of all backgrounds. Eventually, she rose from the chair and made her way to the elevator, passing by a few business associates who offered polite nods. She forced a small smile, her thoughts still with the countless people who had suffered indignities far beyond a missed flight or a harsh interrogation. In exposing Thompson, she had peeled back a layer of institutional bias that ran deeper than any single officer. The real victory would come when travelers could step into any airport and know they'd be treated with basic human respect. With each step toward the exit, Imani felt the subtle weight of responsibility and possibility. She may have started as just another passenger with a problematic passport, but now the spotlight was on her, and she intended to use it to dismantle the very structure that had empowered people like Thompson for too long. Meanwhile, the viral incident generated an unexpected surge of publicity for Trident Airways. Public sentiment largely rallied behind Imani, praising her poise under adversity. Some travelers announced on social media that they would switch to Trident, wanting to support an airline whose leadership, especially a black female majority owner, stood for fairness and accountability. At the same time, the airline's board navigated the tricky territory of crisis communication, ensuring that the storyline wouldn't overshadow their upcoming expansions into Asia and the Middle East. Imani had multiple Zoom calls with top executives, planning how to integrate a new corporate social responsibility initiative that would target airport and airline staff training on bias, empathy, and inclusivity. "What happened to me can't keep happening to others," she told them. "I want Trident to collaborate with airports worldwide on advanced training, so no one else faces the humiliation I did." Board members agreed. Many expressed awe that she'd turned a personal ordeal into a corporate opportunity to lead by example. They drafted partnerships with organizations specializing in diversity, equity, and inclusion programs for large-scale airport operations. Over time, these new programs promised to create ripple effects, not just in Atlanta, but potentially in the entire airline industry. A week later, Imani returned to Atlanta. As she stepped off the Trident flight, she felt a swirl of mixed emotions. This was the same airport where she'd been publicly harassed. Yet it was also the airport that now welcomed her with banners of apology, unity, and respect. To her surprise, a small group of well-wishers waited at arrivals, including a few flight crew from her airline, some community activists who'd supported her stance, and even random passengers who recognized her from the viral video. They applauded politely as she walked into the terminal. Someone pressed a bouquet of flowers into her arms, thanking her for standing up for all of us. Imani blinked back tears. She'd wanted to maintain anonymity to observe real passenger experiences, but fate had thrust her into the limelight. She realized that with visibility came responsibility, and she was ready to carry that responsibility with grace. Later that day, she had a meeting with the police chief and airport commissioner in a private conference room. They gave her updates on the measures being taken, including retraining of airport officers and new protocols to prevent baseless harassment. Although she couldn't be sure of every promise, she noted the sincerity in their voices. She listened carefully, gave suggestions, and underlined that the public would hold them accountable. Before leaving, the police chief said, "Miss Campbell, I truly apologize for what you went through, not just because you're an airline owner, but because no traveler should have to endure that." Imani nodded. "Thank you. The real victory will be preventing this from happening to others." A month after the incident, Imani strolled through Hartsfield-Jackson once more, this time with an official entourage. They were inaugurating a new lounge for Trident Airways, a luxurious space designed to enhance the passenger experience. The local press attended, curious to see the airline's progressive approach in the wake of the confrontation. Standing beside the new lounge's champagne ribbon, Imani gave a short speech. She mentioned how her personal encounter with airport security had reinforced Trident's commitment to customer respect and dignity. She also praised the steps taken by the airport to address the situation. The crowd broke into applause as she cut the ribbon. In that moment, Imani felt a sense of closure. Though the memory of Thompson's accusations still stung, she had transformed that pain into purpose. The airline she led was thriving, setting new standards for inclusive service, and her personal ordeal had ignited discussions about bias and accountability across the industry. Officer Bradley Thompson, now stripped of his uniform, was not present, of course. Rumor had it he was no longer employed by the department. No official statement came from him. The quiet end to his career was the final note of karma that had circled back. In the lounge, passengers mingled happily, enjoying refreshments and comfortable seating. None of them likely knew the drama that had unfolded not long ago. Imani observed them with a gentle smile. For these travelers, the airport was an open gateway, not a place of dread, and she would do her utmost to keep it that way. And that, dear viewers, is the gripping story of how a simple boarding glitch escalated into a dramatic confrontation, only for the shocking truth to come crashing down on everyone involved. Imani Campbell, secretly the majority owner of Trident Airways, faced bias, humiliation, and even the threat of arrest because her passport data had been flagged. Yet she stood tall, revealed her identity in stunning fashion, and brought hard-earned karma to those responsible. More than just a personal triumph, her actions triggered changes that continue to improve how airports handle travelers from all walks of life. If you found this story inspiring, and a powerful reminder that justice can prevail, please don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with friends and family, and subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories of resilience and hope. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.